Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Exercise is Bullshit, which of course stands for bodybuilding, utilizing logical lifting and scientific heuristics to inform training. I am joined today by PhD student out of McMaster University, Derrick. Is it Van Avery or Van Avery?
Yeah,
You can
Van
say
Avery.
it. Van
Yeah,
Avery.
Van
So
Avery.
Derrick is part of the McMaster's lab under the tutelage of Stu Phillips. You know some of his colleagues and other previous students from McMaster. We've had Sarah Oikawa on, Alysha D'Souza. We're going to have Lauren Colenso-Semple on in the future. So one of the leading research schools in the country. Derrick, why don't you just introduce yourself, give us a little background into the exercise science research that you're participating in and kind of how you got involved with McMaster and just the science space in general.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Logan. I really appreciate it, the opportunity. Yeah, so I started out as a powerlifter, bodybuilder. I opened my own gym following my own undergrad in 2017, and was reading research, obviously as a practitioner to inform how I do things, to help make choices for myself, my clients, and honestly for fun. Like I love just nerding out about this stuff. And that was when I decided to go back and pursue a master's degree. So I went to, my wife and I actually moved to New York for a little while, and I did my master's in human performance under Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. And that was more where we kind of looked at optimizing, trying to maximize hypertrophy and kind of get inside the applied research methodologies. And I had a lot of fun and got to learn a lot from Brad. And I'm actually from Ontario, Canada, so my hometown is 2 hours from McMaster. And so I was familiar and a big fan of Stu Phillips' work and in the protein metabolism lab here at McMaster, and had a meeting with Brad while I was finishing my master's, and I said, like, I'm not usually an all or nothing guy, but this is where I want to go for a PhD, and I love their work, and I want to contribute and learn from these guys, and it's had a huge influence on me, and literally that day, Stu emailed us to congratulate us on a review paper that I had wrote with Brad and Jozo Gurgic and another colleague, Daniel Plotkin. And I spoke with Brad. He's like, yeah, you should probably respond to that. And so about a year and a half later, I started my PhD with Stu, and now I'm 3 years in and having a lot of fun. So right now, my PhD is more focused on women physiology, particularly with hormones and load. So I look at kind of the internal and external variables that I don't think contribute to resistance training adaptations in a way to hopefully lower barriers to resistance training and get more people lifting.
That's awesome. I completely forgot that you went to Lehman for your master's. I just assumed, because we haven't talked for a while, that you were at McMaster the whole
Yeah.
time. But that's a really cool story that Stu emailed you. And I agree with Brad, who's also a friend of the program too. Yeah, if Stu emails you and congratulates you, you should probably respond back to him. But he's the
Yeah.
nicest guy, anyways. He's super
Oh,
approachable, even if he
yeah.
hadn't done that.
I can't say enough
Okay.
good things about him.
Yeah, there's too many. So besides your PhD that you're pursuing now, tell us a little bit about you mentioned when you graduated from school originally, you started your company, which is Calgary Barbell. Is that correct?
So I also I do work for Calgary Barbell. So I and kind of contracted out to on commission to work
Gotcha.
online coaching powerlifters and uh, for obviously powerlifting and then nutrition coaching as well. My own
Nice.
gym, so I own a gym, South Ken Barbell, so a lot of
Gotcha.
barbells. So
Yeah.
I have a gym. My wife and I own our own gym back in our hometown. Uh,
Gotcha.
so it's about our hometown's about 3,500 people, but we're the only local health club there. So we opened that up in 2017, and then I started working for Calgary Barbell in an online space in 2020.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
So
So
lots
you've
of
got your hands
basically,
in lots of different. Yeah.
yeah, my life is devoted to lifting weights.
Yeah.
Research, hobby, job, all the
Yeah.
good stuff. It's literally
All the
my
above.
father-in-law always makes fun of me for it's like literally just picking stuff up and putting it down. But
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
I love
And
it.
why don't you tell our listeners too a little bit about, because when I met you, you were doing your masters, I think, and you had talked about, I don't think you had competed yet, but you were talking about doing a natural bodybuilding competition. Why don't you just talk a little bit about how that
Sure.
process
Yeah.
was? I think all of this stuff is going to lay some good foundation for what we're going to be talking about today, which is actually pretty closely related with a lot of the things you do, and I'm sure it's why you were interested in taking part in the project. So tell us a little bit about being in the natural bodybuilding space and what that was like.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to. So, yeah, the again, working for Calgary Barbell, I came at it as a power lifter. I've been powerlifting for uh, almost 10 years now, and so I've been resistance training for 16 years. And so the way powerlifting works is just like muscle growth, as it becomes harder and harder to add minimal amounts to your total. And so actually, while in my masters, my wife and I had our first child, Ella. And so obviously, being a father becomes much more of a priority than powerlifting. And so I didn't have 3 hours to dedicate to the gym anymore. uh, and bodybuilding was something new and exciting for me to pursue, from the context of like, hey, I don't have to train as long. I need to, I dieted before multiple times for powerlifting to, go down a weight class, go up a weight class, and all that stuff. And my passion for physiology is really where I wanted to pursue it, as like, I want to see how far I can push my body in something new and exciting to get better at, essentially. And so um, yeah, I started dieting down at about 96 kilos. So yeah, I got back from New York at like 215, and over the course of like a year and a half with diet breaks and stuff, of course, I got down to about 86 kilos, and then hung out there for a while, and then use powerlifting as a tool to give me kind of a halfway point for contest prep. So I work with a guy named Brian Miner from 3D Muscle Journey. So I hired Brian just because he's well versed as a competitive bodybuilder and powerlifter. He's got his hands in both as well. So I kind of wanted to learn from somebody that knows what they're doing. And so Brian and I, we dieted down for a powerlifting meet as a 75 kilo. So it was a 24-hour weigh-in. So I dieted down to just under 80 kilos or so, and dieted down and made weight as a 75 kilo in April of last year, and did quite well. So that was exciting. My absolute total went down, of course, but my relative dots, or whatever Wilk score they use in powerlifting, went up significantly. So I was quite excited about that. And then use that as like, okay, we're gonna have a week here, just eat at maintenance, and let's go into contest prep from there. So I prepped from about 175 pounds, and my lightest was 164, but my stage weight was about 168 pounds. So yeah, it was really fun. Competed last
That's
August was my first show, and then things just kept going well for me, and I ended up competing all the way to end of November, because I qualified for the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation's Worlds as an amateur. So I got to represent Team Canada for that, and kind of went out for my first season doing that. So it was
that's
better
freaking
experience
awesome,
than I
man.
could have ever asked for. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
man.
that's about as good as it could be. All you had to do was lose 53 pounds. So for anybody
Yeah,
who's thinking about thinking like, oh, I'll just lose 20
yeah.
pounds and get on stage. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you will.
Yeah, there's
No,
I think it
that's
was
awesome,
Lane
man.
that said Brian Whitaker, one of the most famous natural bodybuilders. Like, if you're in the space, you'll know who Brian Whitaker is. But he'll say, get to where you think you're stage lean, and then lose 10 more pounds, and then you're
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
So
Oh, geez, that's
it's quite
crazy.
it was quite a humbling experience too.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. My wife does bodybuilding, and it's always like, it's just never like you can never be lean enough. So that's why I've not dipped my toe into that. So, but I think it's awesome, especially the people that can do it completely natural. My hat's off to you, man. And what a cool story, like your first experience to be able to go through that. So, Before we hop
Thank you,
into
man.
the main focus of today's podcast, I just love to ask the guests, like, as a scientist, as somebody who's really like an actual scientist, not just a armchair scientist like I am that's just reading papers and stuff. You're actually doing the work. You've been in school for so long now, working in some of the best sports science labs in the world. What is something you've changed your mind on in the last 3 to 5 years that you were convinced was the other way around before you learned more information about it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and to be honest, that's one of the questions for my PhD right now, and that came from the review that I wrote with Brad that I mentioned Stu emailed us about, and it came from Stu's work, and that is the effects of load on adaptations. I was a gym bro before I got into this, and if you had told me that lifting light you could build muscle and as equivalent as lifting heavy, so long as the stimulus is equated, I would have told you you're foolish. I didn't believe it. And even with, Dr. Schoenfeld's dissertation was on the 7x3, 3x10, powerlifting study and things like that. I still was very skeptical of that. And, that is something that I had to change my assumption on. And there's tons of literature now, and particularly in males, where load is not a determinant of hypertrophy. Of course, there's something to be said about the specificity component with lifting heavy for strength. Um, but yeah, that's the study I'm doing right now to follow up with my dissertation, is looking at that effects in females, because from a relative standpoint, it seems that males and females can grow equal amount of muscle from resistance training, and I'm hoping that that is shown with our work to follow up. So, but yeah,
Yeah, no,
three
that was a
years ago, 5 years ago, for sure, I would have. No, you gotta lift heavy. Like, I'm a power lifter.
yeah. You got to lift heavy.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and so
What's the point
definitely,
if you're not lifting heavy? Yeah,
right, exactly. And so
yeah,
now I'm telling participants, like, and people that come to my gym, that, oh, I don't want to lift heavy, I don't want to get bulky, and I go, I've been trying to do that for over half my life. If
yeah,
you get bulky, you just let me know. But then, we always kind of say, lifting heavy is a strategy, but it's not the strategy.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love that. I think that's been a big kind of turnaround for me too, because I was always under the, ever since I was in like middle school and first learning about physiology, it was always the repetition continuum. So that was quite a massive change in just how I understood resistance training as well. That's great. Okay, so today I wanted to bring you on because you were part of this recent study that Jeff Nippard did. His kind of N of one experiment was, I guess it was an N of two. It was him and his brother,
and it's you, yeah.
but he released a video probably about a month ago now, 2 months maybe, where
Yeah.
he did a year long fitness experiment. He's a lifelong natural bodybuilder like you, and he wanted to see, and please jump in if I'm screwing any of this up, but essentially how
Mhm.
much muscle he could gain naturally by optimizing all these different factors and variables in his training. And for listeners that don't know, Jeff Nippard is one of the biggest fitness influencers, I would say, in the world, probably. Lifetime natural bodybuilder, training for 15 plus years. He's got a great physique, really smart guy, great at articulating difficult concepts in a really easily digestible way. He's got like 7 million subscribers on YouTube. So I guess my first question is, one, did I miss anything there? And then two, how did you guys kind of get connected for this project? And what did that process look like putting this study together? Because he did all of his testing, his body composition testing, everything through McMaster.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, covered everything really, really well, Logan. I think the one other comment to add is just he also has a brother, Brad, who is completely untrained and just was not interested in lifting. And they also wanted to look at his kind of rate of adaptations, to look at how much can we grow in a year versus somebody with similar genetics who's been doing it for over a decade. The cool thing about Jeff as well is I believe both his parents, I know his mother was a bodybuilder, and I think his dad did, or they definitely were well versed into weight training. So really cool genetics to set you up for bodybuilding. But yeah, he actually, being close, Jeff lives just near, like outside of Toronto area, and so he actually reached out to Stu, about this, and looking at, like, we always talk about this upper physiological limit of muscle growth. Like, you can only get so big, that genetic ceiling, but there's a couple things. In reality, most people are never going to get there, and there's a whole host of reasons why. But everyone's always worried about their genetic ceiling. But again, uh, unlikely to get there. But somebody like Jeff, who's been training and focusing on, like, optimizing his training, his nutrition, his sleep, his recovery, his even his stress levels and things like that. He's trying to totally look at, okay, am I doing all these things right? Am I still able to grow any muscle, or am I kind of at that quote unquote genetic ceiling? So the problem with the resistance training literature, particularly with trained individuals, is we're capped with research typically lasting 10 to 12 weeks, because it's usually done at universities. We have breaks, holidays, all that sort of stuff. And it's hard to get people to commit to a regime for that long without having, other confounding factors. And so the measurements and tools that we use to measure muscle growth are not sensitive enough to detect the change that you would expect to see in somebody as well trained in Jeff in 10 to 12 weeks. It's just not going to happen. At least outside of the measurement error, because that's a whole other concept we can talk about too. But so the real impetus was to work with Jeff in putting him in a caloric surplus while training is hard, and using quote unquote advanced techniques, like, I'm no sure you're familiar with, like the lengthened partials and things like that, to really give himself, I'm going all in, and can I gain as much muscle, or how much muscle can I gain, and then when I diet back down, am I able to hold on or retain any of that tissue? And so that was kind of the whole project from his side of things. So, and it was a really fun opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting the thing with his brother too, because that was a great addition as well because of the similar genetics. Obviously, we all know about like newbie gains and things like that. So to see somebody who's been training so long, so consistently against somebody who's literally, it sounded like at least, has never really lifted up a weight before, and to see the juxtaposition between those two things was a really cool added kind of benefit to see like what can you actually accomplish as somebody who's never worked out before over the course of a year. And I think his brother was probably the perfect example of that. Obviously probably has better genetics than the average person starting, but anybody can diet and work out 4 or 5 days a week if they have the motivation and the consistency to do that. So kind of giving people an idea of what's a realistic goal over the course of a year, because I think you did a great job of pointing out too, like even with the newbie gains, like I've seen some pretty tremendous increases over 12 weeks for like a study where you're like, wow, 2 pounds of muscle, that's crazy. But will that magnify out over the course of a year? And then obviously with somebody like Jeff too, how, if he's been training so consistently for so long, really great point on just the, in 12 weeks, you're probably not, something's happening potentially, but you're not actually going to be able to measure it accurately in that time frame. So all across the board there, really, really great explanation. What were kind of your initial thoughts? I don't know if Stu approached you guys with this idea or if he just set you up with Jeff and you talked about it as far as his ideas for the study design. And did you, because Alysha was involved in this as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you
Yeah.
guys
So
give him any thoughts or feedback on the structure of setting it up, or did he kind of have something in his mind to begin with and you just rolled with that?
yeah. He so we met with Stu on the first visit. We kind of chatted about what we were thinking and what we wanted to look at. And that was what we were particularly interested, was like, okay, if we measure some growth here while dieting, in a surplus, excuse me, are we able to hang on to that growth following a deficit, to make sure that, like, hey, any lean mass you gained here is not attributable to water retention, increase of fluid, um, and anything like that. So he actually came to us with a training program that he had design, and we made like we had a meeting over it, and we just chatted about how we think it could be optimized. But he had everything. Like, this guy, as you know, he's well versed in the literature and well read. So he had a really good program design. There was one thing where we chatted about with his brother. So he had advanced techniques, like things like lengthen partials and rest pause, mile reps, things like that. I'm like, your brother's going to grow well regardless. But the idea was like, he was totally receptive. He's like, I get that. And he challenged back with like, I want him to do the exact same, just so we can see the stimulus difference. So as untrained person, you give them begin weight training, you see recomposition. They're going to lose fat, they're going to gain muscle. But what we did, which I think was particularly interesting, was they did the exact same program, and we manipulated their intake to gain relatively the exact same amount of weight per week. And so we just had like a weekly check-in on in our group chat, and just, how are you guys doing, how's training going, things like that. He used Macro Factor, like his app, for tracking nutrition, but we would just, okay, let's go, he would, okay, we're gaining at this rate, how should we adjust? And I would just say, add 200 or keep things the same or whatever, just based off the rate of weight gain, and to get similar increases. So it worked out really well. So we kind of collaborated on it from that approach.
That's cool. Can you talk just a little bit more about the program structure, as far as like, well, I've got kind of the list here. Just let me know if I'm missing anything. So there was the initial DEXA and the strength test. So you did the isometric leg extension, and maybe there was one other exercise that you did a dynamometer on, or was it just the leg extension?
No, we just measured isometric strength on the Biodex, knee extension.
Got it. And then you did quarterly check-ins, is that right? So every 3 months we were doing a check-in. And then
so we actually did
DEXA and strength test.
So we did.
Go ahead.
We did a check-in actually after month 1. So I think it was 5.
Okay.
But by the time they actually got in, it was 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, because we wanted to see the adaptations initially, and that's where Brad had made so much progress initially, and of course some of it is attributable to water retention, things like that. Swelling, he started taking creatine, so there's all of these things. But I was like, I've never seen such a robust increase in 6 weeks. Like, I had to run his DEXA again, because I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. But that checked out, and the BIA also corroborated their findings with that. But of course, some of it would be attributable to water, and that's why it's important. Stu's big on us with saying, like, DEXA measures, it's really good at measuring bone mass, and it's pretty good at measuring fat mass, but it does not measure muscle mass. It gives us a proxy, what we call lean soft tissue mass, and that is muscle, organs, water, and so obviously swelling, edema. For those science-based lifters out there, they'll love that. But that all can confound things. With regards to the training program, those guys trained on their own, and they had a 5-day split throughout the intervention, which is like, I think, summarized on his video. But they also took a 3-week vacation to Tokyo, so we took them and they did like a 3-day full body kind of maintenance phase there, and that was about halfway through the study.
Nice. So it was kind of a halfway check-in, and it was essentially an initial bulk up, right? They're trying to just increase calories, increase overall mass, hopefully add in as much additional lean tissue as possible while doing that. When was the cutoff point for we're going to start cutting back down? Was it right at about halfway at 6 months?
Yeah. So they actually they bulked all the way up to 9 months. So at the 9-month check-in, when they dieted down. Yeah. So we dieted only for about 12 weeks. And then what happened, if you watch the video,
Jeff hurt himself.
He explains weeks. Well, he hurt himself as well, which was super unfortunate. But we also decided to extend the cut, and so they were doing really well with things. And again, our biggest thing was, okay, we've measured growth here. We see some increases. You're getting leaner. Are we going to hold on to that growth as you continue to cut? So the idea was super cool, and it worked out. I couldn't believe how beautifully it worked out. They weighed in the same on their final check-in, both of them, the exact same body weight as they weighed in at the baseline visit. Now, the
Yeah,
really
that's
cool
crazy.
thing, and this is crazy, is they're the exact same body weight too, like to
Yeah,
the kilo, like half point,
that's
half
awesome.
kilo. Yeah, so that was super cool. And just, one of the things with a case study, and that's why it's important to like note that is an N equals two in this um, experience, but this isn't like a trial where we're making, causal inferences or anything like that. We're just tracking and monitoring what these guys did on their own. Um,
Yeah,
so, I've seen some comments from folks being like, "Oh, you're p hacking" and stuff like that, which is not.
yeah.
There's no
There's no
statistical
p-value
analysis.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not running ANOVAs and things like that to get an
Yeah.
effect we're looking for. We literally are just being transparent of like, this is what these guys did, this is what we measured, and um, you know, here's some insights and
And
our
I
findings and what we
actually,
think.
I, I kind of like this idea a little bit more. I know it's obviously not completely science based, and it's hard to know the noise that you're getting if somebody does cheat on a diet or whatever. But this kind of thing where you have somebody who's going to be committed for so long, I think there's a ton of value in that and tracking it. Like obviously he does a great job of recording everything and kind of giving, diary kind of feedback of stuff. But because there is, in scientific literature, you have to zero in on such a specific focus, which is obviously important. But to have those other variables, I think in a more realistic, real life scenario, I think there's a ton of value in that too, in these kind of case studies. And I would honestly love to see more of that stuff. I don't know if that's feasible for a university or anything, but like get 100 people and have them track, but like, be honest. If you screw up, if you cheat for 3 weeks, just tell us you ate Haagen-Dazs every day. We don't care. But like, see what actually happens over the course of a year and check-ins. And
Yeah,
I don't know. I think, yeah, are you going to know exactly did they optimize or what variable contributed to what thing? But I think there's, sometimes we get too hyper focused, and seeing like the broader picture was really interesting for me. I had
yeah,
a couple other thoughts I want to share with you too, Derrick, and kind of
yeah,
get your
absolutely.
feedback. Just because you were so obviously intimately involved with this, but my first thought initially when seeing this video, because I follow a lot of Jeff's stuff, was this is going to be interesting. Like, he's a smart guy. I was excited to see what they kind of put together. My second thought as I was watching the video and seeing that he was doing a bulking and cutting phase was this probably isn't going to work as well as he's thinking, just because I've seen so many people like, let's get big, let's get small, nothing changed. Obviously, Jeff's smarter than most, like bros at the gym, so he's probably doing it a little
Hmm.
bit better. But I think Jeff even said at some point it might have made more sense just to do a slight caloric surplus and like ride that out for a year. What were your kind of thoughts on that post study? Like, do you think if you had to do it
Yeah,
again, you would maybe just do a slight surplus and try to like, let's add as much muscle and then maybe like 2 weeks of dieting at the end or something?
yeah, no, that is such a great question, Logan, and something we did chat about after the fact. And this is something too where people will debate on social media is, is a surplus required for bulking, beyond a certain point. Of course, if you're contest lean, you got to get in a bulking phase to get out of that low level of body fat. Um, but the impetus when we chat about this, the idea is like, okay, bodybuilders, historically, and this is comes back to sometimes the bros are right, sometimes they're wrong, but oftentimes like it's been working for a long time for them, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but that's an interesting opportunity to potentially follow up on, right? If we get Jeff to, I think his first X was like 15%, so a nice healthy body fat level. If we could keep him kind of at this, maintaining, eating at maintenance, and seeing what happens over the course of a year with good productive training, that could give us some more insights, right, and answer the question. Because some folks will say, yeah, we don't need to bulk. Muscle building is a stimulus. It's an adaptation from that stimulus, and it's a signaling process. You lift weights, you have protein, you signal protein synthesis. That doesn't require surplus. And I'm certainly not in a disagreement with that from an outside lens, but there's something to be said of a surplus and just having extra energy available to promote training. Like, have you ever tried training in a surplus? It's quite fun. As a guy who came from, a 6% body fat a year ago this time, I'm probably closer to 26. Now it's a lot more fun when you're training. Again, does that matter when you have to cut longer? Potentially, right? You could, limit your surplus and rate of weight gain may be the same, but there's really nobody's really done that. So I think that could be an interesting question to kind of follow up with.
Yeah, I think Jeff would be kind of the perfect person to do that too. Not to say that he doesn't have responsibilities, but like he doesn't have responsibilities, right? In the sense of his job is be a content creator, right? Like he doesn't have
Yeah,
kids as far
yeah.
as I know. It's like it's the perfect
Mhm.
person to say like, okay, if we did this really well structured, add 100 calories here per day for 4 weeks and then add 200 calories and like slowly build that up. I don't know. I'd just be really
Mhm.
interested to see. But again, the realistic nature of doing that outside of like a case study is probably not realistic. So that was
Yeah.
my only biggest thing was like I wonder if he could have gotten more. But as far as the results go, it was still pretty impressive. I mean, he added 2.7 pounds of lean tissue over the course of a year. I believe he was down 0.5% body fat. Like you said, for him, I know it was like the exact identical weight. Maybe it was like 0.1 pounds difference or something.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think when you frame that over the fact that he's been training consistently for 15 years, I thought that was fairly good. What was your initial impression on how
Mhm.
everything turned out from like a composition perspective?
Yeah. So a couple things, right? And this comes back to the DEXA in the utility that we have with our measurements. And so they do have an inherent measurement error within them. And so there has been some literature, particularly with bodybuilders, where the DEXA is not as high, but somewhere about 5% um, can have an error rate. And so BIA for bodybuilders even worse because it's sensitive to water, and I can talk about that as well. But there's a study that's been upwards of 11% of an error rate in body fat percentage. So if you want to hack your body composition, if you have a DEXA coming up and you want your lean mass to increase, just have some water before you drink it, and your body fat percentage and all that stuff will go down. But all that to say, like, that amount post cut to be there at his stage is impressive and certainly worth mentioning. Like, is it within the measurement error? Yeah, perhaps. But one of the things, and this is what I said with Jeff, our measurements still and don't, and particularly from a bodybuilding standpoint, and where Jeff's at, right? We don't go up on stage with our DEXA and a BIA and all this stuff and measure body fat directly. We have the eye test, and that's the reality. And so, he did a great job of taking before and after pictures in the same studio, same conditions, under the same hydration status. And the biggest thing I think, does he look bigger? And the answer is yes, and particularly with his back and his chest and arms and all that stuff. Sure, they look he looks great, of course, but his back, and guess what? We don't have measurements of his back, and so we have the eye test, and that's literally what I told him. And he was like, "I had to gain muscle, bro," and I was like, "Definitely did." Um, was it as much as you were hoping? I don't know. Like, I think I'm in the video where I'm like, dude, like, it's hard. Like, that was my way of saying, like, I don't know if you're gonna get anything. Stu was very like, you know, um, conservative with his prediction, and I think rightfully so. But all that to say is, like, over the course of a year, if he's still gaining increases and looking better in photos, I think that just highlights the fact that, like, we got to start looking at things from a days and weeks perspective and look at months and years, because this stuff, that's what it takes, is months and years of dedication. And Jeff is like the epitome of dedication. This guy was dialed in for over a year, and yeah, I think I would be confident in saying he's added some muscle.
Yeah, and I think we're so jaded just as a society and like a fitness culture too, because there's so many people who are online claiming natty, that are, oh, you put on 10 pounds of muscle with my 30-day program or whatever, and it's just so ludicrous. And like, just full transparency, like I take TRT. When I first started taking TRT, I did a DEXA right when I started. I did a DEXA a year later. I was within a pound of weight, and I gained 15 pounds of lean mass and lost 14 pounds of body fat. So that's the
That's
difference
not a bad
between,
run.
yeah, but that's and I wasn't nearly optimizing the way that Jeff was. So like, when people say that, like, and I'm not on like a supernatural dose either. Like, I'm not on a Chris Bumstead or IFBB pro dose. Like, I'm on an actual therapeutic dose. So for somebody
Sure.
like me that's been training for 15 plus years as well, to all of a sudden see that without optimizing my nutrition, I wasn't like super paying attention to everything. I started working out a little bit more after like a decade almost of just doing twice per week, but I didn't make this crazy transition in my training. So I think people expect what I got, but doing it Jeff's way. And there's a huge
Yeah,
discrepancy there. So I just wanted to point that out too, not to pat myself on the back, but I think there's a huge difference between like what people expect you're going to gain and then what you actually will gain if you've been consistent for a long time.
yeah,
So
for
looking
sure.
back on the whole thing and seeing how consistent he's been, I think almost 3 pounds of muscle, even if it was only two, like with the error rate, whatever it is,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's pretty solid. That's 10 more pounds of muscle potentially over the next decade. If he, or 20 pounds over the next decade, if he keeps up at that rate, which obviously it's probably going to slow down too. But for somebody who's 5'4" or whatever he is, if he could put on another 10 pounds of muscle over the next decade, he's going to look like
Yeah,
freaking He-Man. So
yeah, yeah.
um
I do think
let's
that,
I
like,
just
and
want to
that's such a.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to say that it's such an important conversation. I appreciate you being transparent about things because that's for sure at his stage. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that he's 100% natural. Like, seeing him in person, like he made a video just this week. We kind of chatted about, like, if you want fake natty accusations, just lose your body fat. Like, I'm back to 205 pounds, 93 kilos. I don't get a single comment about steroids. When I was 75 kilos, I had three or four folks, at the gym and the change rooms. Like, it's funny. But yeah, and the other thing, Jeff is actually on this paper that we're working on finishing right now. And his piece actually came from this case study where we were chatting. I said, hey, why don't you get involved with this? Because we're actually writing uh, a, a really cool paper, but one of the parts that Jeff's contributed to is how much muscle can you gain? And so, as we just kind of talked about, and you see with his brother, it's a sharp increase, and then it essentially becomes an asymptote. So, even if, like you said, if it's a pound this year, it might be zero point 0.7 of a pound next year, and it gets lower and lower, and then we start, scratching where it gets hard to see from year 10 to 15. There might be hardly any difference, but for folks like Jeff, that's what they want to do, and is the juice worth the squeeze, then go for it, because again, there is a genetic ceiling, but nobody's really been there that we know of, at least naturally. So
Yeah.
yeah,
One of
cool
these
stuff.
days we got to team up Mr. Beast to like dangle, $100 million in front of Jeff to just juice to the fucking gills. Like, how much gear
Yeah.
can we give this guy? He just walks out looking like the whole. I would love that. Did you see that thing he did where he
Yeah.
like locked his fat friend in a gym for a year?
I did, yeah,
Yeah, it's like
that's
that, but with
insane.
Jeff, and
Yeah,
just steroids, lots
yeah,
of steroids.
yeah.
One day
Yeah,
we'll
and
see.
that's
Um,
yeah. I mean, you never
just
know.
based
Never
on
say never.
everything, I didn't never say no. He's still a young guy. He's like barely 30, I bet.
Yeah, I
Um,
think 35. Yeah, something like that.
Jeff is. Well, he looks
Yeah,
great.
I think.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
as far as like, if somebody saw this video, they saw this experiment and they got inspired, whether it's by Jeff or by his brother, as far as what they could accomplish based on everything you learned from doing this, what are some things you would recommend, maybe some changes you would make if somebody was to do this on their own? Like, say they're starting out, let's just assume they're starting out fresh, they've maybe followed Jeff for a while, They're really thinking about starting a routine. Do you think they need the bulking phase? Should they just like give us some feedback based on how this whole experiment went, from the programming perspective, all of that? What would be a great way for somebody to kind of
Yeah.
do this own N of one experiment on their own?
Yeah, no, a really great question. And to kind of follow up with what I was saying earlier with Brad, like the biggest thing you can do is just start doing something. If you're doing nothing, like doing something is going to be huge. So getting the similar program training structure that Jeff and Brad did, certainly not necessary. For the context of that study and case study, was a cool opportunity. Brad was willing to do so, but yeah, definitely not required in that context. Particularly somebody who's never trained before, if you're interested in changing your body composition, lifting weights is going to add muscle, decrease fat. Body recomposition is a thing, particularly in an untrained person, and that's where I would not recommend uh, starting a surplus. Like if you have never lifted before, you want to gain muscle, surplus certainly not recommended. Just start lifting, eat your protein. And again, that's a whole other thing. That effective protein is very small. It's lifting that's going to put on the muscle tissue. So if you're doing nothing, start lifting once, twice a week. And give your body a stimulus, and over time, as those adaptations get smaller and smaller, that's where you go, okay, maybe I'm going to go a third time. Maybe I'll, instead of doing 3 sets, I'll do a fourth, and things like that. And as you can see, you can do it for a very long time and still make progress.
Yeah, and I think Jeff is a great resource for that too. Like I didn't go into this wanting this to turn into like a Jeff Nippard uh publicity video, but
Oh no,
I just bought his, I saw his muscle ladder book was on sale on Amazon, and I bought it. I know it's kind of an entry level book, but I'm just interested in his writing style. I've never read any of his stuff before. I've only seen his videos, and I can't recommend it highly enough for somebody that's new to lifting. I think he does a great job of putting together programming and really understanding the fundamentals of lifting. So I would say everything you said, plus using a resource like that or watching some of Jeff's videos on how to get started. I know he sells a bunch of different
Yeah,
like workout programs on his website too. So you could just buy a program from him that you could easily
for sure.
incorporate. Macro Factor is actually the tracking app I use. I don't think food tracking is
That's great.
necessarily
Yeah.
super important except for protein. Like when you first start off, like just
Hmm.
create the habit of actually going to the gym. But
Yeah,
at some
exactly.
point, as you progress, right, like you're going to want to know, how do I actually start to lose some body fat? And I think Macro Factor is a great tool.
Hmm.
As we wrap this up, Derrick, this video has over, last time I checked, over 4 million views. It must have been really cool to be
Oh,
a part of
awesome.
something like that. Have you had any people like
Hmm.
mention it to you, or do you feel famous now? Or are you just going to drop out of your PhD
uh,
and become a YouTube influencer?
Yeah, no, I'll let Jeff do the YouTube side of things. I think he does a great job, and like you said, he's an awesome guy. His book is great. He actually gifted our lab a copy, and it's great.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, it's funny. I have a few participants in our study right now that found out about our study by like through Jeff's YouTube and was like,
Oh, that's
"Oh,
awesome.
this is at McMaster. Like we do this," and then like they're like, "Oh, I recognize you from the videos." So it's kind of funny.
Oh, that's cool.
But I'm certainly more happy to be in the background doing the research and still coaching my clients, one on one. I love that aspect of things. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, I know you've got a bunch of new research that's coming out. If people want to learn more about you or your research, what's the best way to keep up or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So certainly we do have some exciting findings to share from Alysha D'Souza and I's recent study we did. So we're working on getting that manuscript out. But um, and some other stuff, of course, like I mentioned, Jeff's case study and some other papers we're working on. But if you want to find me, you can just I'm on Instagram, Derrick DERRICK_CBB, and then of course if you're interested in any of my research and want a copy of anything, you can just email me at Derrick@calgarybarbell.com. And of course, my supervisor, Stu Phillips, he's pretty active on social media. So follow him, Mac Kinprof. He'll share everything, I hope, anyway.
He's
So
been pretty good. I've asked him for papers in the past, and he's just is he still on sabbatical?
yeah, he's back now. Yeah. So
Oh,
he's
okay, nice.
I'm
I'll have to
actually going
reach
to meet
out, see
with
if I can
him
get
in
him.
like 5 minutes.
Oh no!
So
All right. Well, please
yeah,
tell him I said
yeah,
hi, and
yeah,
I'm going to reach out to him
yeah.
and
We'll
try to
do.
get him back on
Yeah,
as well if he's got the
yeah.
time.
Awesome.
But
Yeah, for
Derrick,
sure.
thank you so much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate getting to see you again and sitting down with you and your insight. And I'm looking forward to sharing this episode. I'll make sure I tag you in it when it goes live. And if there's anything else in the future, we'll have to get you back on and talk more about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Logan. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much, man. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you in a couple weeks.